About future economic relations between the UK and US. Simon Owen reports.
President Trump talking up the prospect of a transatlantic trade deal if the UK leaves the European Union.
The United States is committed to a phenomenal trade deal between the U.S. and the UK. There is tremendous potential in that trade deal.
Speaking at a news conference with Prime Minister Theresa May, the president saying he's also confident of an agreement on Huawei as the Trump administration presses European allies to shun the Chinese tech firm.
I see absolutely no limitations. We've never had limitations. This is a truly great ally and partner.
He said of Huawei, we'll have no problem with that. Simon Owen, Fox News.
Police in Memphis are looking for a man who stabbed an off-duty police officer.
A police officer from the town of Bartlett, Tennessee, was off duty and riding in an Uber in Memphis with a friend early Sunday. And when the two got out of the car, a third person ran out from a nearby house, began arguing, and then stabbed the police officer in both the leg and the neck. He was rushed to the hospital, but the police are still looking for the suspect, whose image was captured on surveillance video. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Can air pollution shorten your life? One study thinks so. Lillian Wu has more.
People living in Los Angeles lose nearly a year of life expectancy because of air pollution. In Venice, Italy, they're dying 1.7 years earlier than if the air were cleaner, and in parts of India, they're losing a decade off their lives. This according to a tool produced by an institute at the University of Chicago. The Air Quality Life Index identifies air pollution, which comes mostly from energy use in urban areas, as the single greatest threat to human health globally, worse than malaria, even smoking, explaining tiny particles enter lungs where they can bypass the body's natural defenses. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
A proposal is being considered today in San Francisco that could force drug addicts with serious mental illnesses into treatment. More from Tanya J. Powers.
The 11-member Board of Supervisors has been divided on the proposal of forcing addicts into treatment programs, those who have been involuntarily detained for psychiatric hospitalization at least 8 times in a year. San Francisco's mayor and other supporters of the proposal say the number of people who could be forced into treatment is small, likely fewer than 50. Critics say it's a violation of civil rights and that the city lacks the services and shelter to do it successfully. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Businesses cannot operate without a license, but that is not a problem for an abortion provider in South Bend, Indiana. More from Chris Woodward.
On Friday, May 31st, Federal District Judge Sarah Evans Barker issued a preliminary injunction that allows Whole Woman's Health Alliance to open in South Bend without a license. Jackie Appleman of St. Joseph County Right to Life.
First of all, we're disappointed that we're having an abortion clinic opening in our community. It's harmful for women and deadly for their babies. But even more shocking was that the judge is completely undermining the state's ability and right to regulate and license organizations doing business in Indiana. Even our hair and nail salons and our restaurants need to be licensed. So now we're going to have a clinic handing out medications to go completely unregulated. It's just nonsense.
Whole Woman's Health, which is headquartered in Texas, has been trying to open in South Bend since 2017 and wants to do chemical abortions, hence the medications that Appleman talked about.
This judge is allowing an organization that has a history of unsafe practices that are harmful to women to open in our community without a license. It's very dangerous, and our local news is not telling that story.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Stocks have been sharply higher today on Wall Street as technology companies start to recover from yesterday's steep losses. And as investors continue to watch developments on the trade front, Mexico's foreign minister said he expects the two sides to reach an agreement and avoid a 5% tariff on Mexican goods. Apple, Advanced Micro Devices, and bank stocks all moved higher. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and on the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Holy Spirit speaks to everybody. The problem is most folks don't listen.
Lonnie Poindexter.
If they do listen, they don't take it to heart or they get fearful or whatever. But when you listen and act upon it, wonderful things happen. And because a man of God heard the voice of God and acted upon it, it blesses me today. And you as well for listening in.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You slap on tariffs to change the behavior of a trading partner, and it looks like the president got their attention. But he means business, and you know it. He's been completely consistent on this issue for 4 years now.
He's absolutely deadly serious. In fact, I fully expect these tariffs to go on to at least the 5% level on June 10th. The president is deadly serious about fixing the situation at the southern border. They've got tremendously strong immigration laws, much stronger than ours. They have the ability to do things that we cannot. Congress will not help us fix our laws, so we're turning to Mexico to help us fix the situation on the border.
Now he is putting some measures in place that hopefully will get them to engage more so that they will start to help us in this process. We can't continue down the path that we're on. We can't continue to operate as a sovereign country with no borders and without enforcement.
And now, Stacy Washington.
And now, here we go. I'm here. I'm sitting in the chair. And your ears, they're all mine. And I've got a fantastic program for you. Guess what? We are going to be chatting with Dr. John York, PhD, Heritage Foundation Fellow. He's a policy analyst with the B. Kenneth Simon Center for Principles and Politics. And he's going to join us to talk about the Honest Ads Act. We are also going to be discussing this. There's a phenomenon going on right now, which is that we have to talk about impeachment all day long. We have to do a dance. We have to pump our shoulders. We have to get a jig about impeachment. And when we do that, then that enables us to not think about some of our more pressing issues like, I don't know, the border. I don't know. Could it be that we have a little bit of an issue with the debt, that we're teeter-tottering on the brink of insolvency, and all we can talk about is, impeachment? So we're going to dig into that. We also have, this was like straight hot fire on online social media. This bishop, he says in a statement that Catholics cannot support, should not support, must not attend LGBTQ Pride Month events. And he lit the angry liberals on fire. They lost it. They lit into him so hard from Hollywood stars, everybody. They're like, you can't be talking to us like that. And he just came back with another statement and said, oh, yes, I can. It's my job. We have to love everybody, but we don't have to celebrate the perversion. We don't have to celebrate it and participate in it. So fantastic. We'll get into that. Who was it? Where was he? Etc. A federal judge has actually rejected Congress, run by the Democrats, the House, the controllers of the purse strings of the United States. He rejected their bid to stop the border wall. I got to tell you, he said they don't have standing. Amazing. So that's good news for us. We have some audio from the president about the Mexico tariffs, which is super important for us to understand his thinking on this. And I feel like I do, but this was good audio of him. Sometimes he's very, very clear and direct, and he just like boom, 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 each single point. And on this particular clip, I felt like he was in the zone. He had something to say and he said it. And then, of course, I want to talk about Basketball Hall of Famer Rick Barry. So many things that go on in our government today are an insult to my intelligence. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, where was I today? First of all, it's Blazing Saddles in St. Louis. And by Blazing Saddles, I mean, if you're outside, your forehead is beaded up with teensy little bits of perspiration. And if you're in the shade, the breeze is blowing and you can feel it and you're going to live. But if you're in the sun, you are, you're thinking to yourself, what happened to spring? And basically this year we had the worst winter, and then we had spring that was nothing but monsoon type rain and sideways wind. And now it's summer. Thanks, St. Louis. I appreciate it. Maybe this is the global warming we were promised. Okay, I'm done. So it's kind of crazy. But today we went out to the Planned Parenthood at Forest Park, and we had a full slate of speakers, some of the most fantastic people ever. I'm reaching in my pocket. I took my little list out. A woman who used to run a Planned Parenthood in Indiana, a lady who's local here. I'd never met her before today. She's a pro-life warrior. She was an amazing speaker. She was one of them. I spoke for a few minutes. It was a great afternoon. The demons were out in full force. There were people actually sitting. They saw us outside with, all of the cameras and everything. We had Fox News was there. No, they didn't interview me. What up with that? I'm wondering, Have I been banned from Fox? Okay, never mind. Who cares? And also, there was CBS and a bunch of other organizations, just like real news cameras there to cover our side. And so glory to God for that. I mean, you know how it is sometimes the news can maybe not be as interested in our perspective on the pro-life side. They were there. They were there. And they interviewed people. And I got to give respect to them. I thought it was really good of them to be there and cover our side as well. They were out with the Planned Parenthood people. They had a rally last week, I think, but not at the Planned Parenthood. And so it was interesting to see, just to see so many camera trucks there and news people and big cameras too. So it was a good, we prayed and we also heard from speakers, and we're just united around this demand that we have that the Planned Parenthood in St. Louis, if it's going to remain open, that it abide by the laws of the state of Missouri and the Missouri Health Department's requests for interviews with all the doctors who are performing abortions, and for them to come online with the safety requirements that the Missouri Department of Health has issued. That's it. License stays there. Obviously, I want to see it close. I want to see that Planned Parenthood become a pregnancy resource center. But as long as abortion is legal in this country, it should be safe, and the standards that are issued by governmental health organizations should be followed to the letter of the law. And if they're not, licenses should be revoked, and court cases should not be able to sidestep the authority given to the health department to make sure that places are safe for medical procedures. Point, period, done. Thank you so much. So that happened. We were there. It was hot. We waved signs, and you can see some of them. I have, if you're watching the live stream, pro-life, pro-woman sign there from Students for Life, and also another organization. We are so grateful to Governor Parsons for his work in this area, and he's been really great, and it's just been wonderful. So now I want to get to Rick Barry, who, to be honest, so I'd never heard of him before, but it's awesome that he's a Hall of Famer. Good stuff. And he has this the statement that he makes, and it was so logical. It just, you know how someone says something and it just clicks? It's just like putting one Lego into another Lego and it matches. It was just like that. Here he is in number 3.
I would think so. In fact, so many things that go on in our government today are an insult to my intelligence. I mean, seriously, how do you justify a country that's so far in debt to borrow more money and give it away to countries that don't like you? And most of the money probably is going into the hands of the leaders of the country, not getting to the people to try to help them out. And then we spend billions of dollars on people who aren't even supposed to be in this country. And I know we were found on immigrants. I mean, but the people came over here and did it the proper way. And they took pride in being a part of America. And now we're spending billions of dollars. And I'm a big supporter of the military. I live in Colorado Springs and have lived there 35 years. I'm not there in the winter now. But Fort Carson, a lot of good military friends. The way that we treat our military or the people who have helped to make this country what it is today is reprehensible. That we have these guys living out in the streets, what's happening at the VAs. Why don't we take this money that we're borrowing and giving away and the money we're billions are spending on all of these immigrants and help our own people out first?
Whoa, that kind of common sense almost hurts. He said we are treating individuals who've gone to foreign lands and defended and supported the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's what you swear to do. You swear an oath to do that. And then you come back to the United States and you're just treated like, you're treated like a tool, and that's not to say that everyone does this, but some people, when they're done with their tools, they just put them anywhere. They don't clean them and put them back in a certain place so they can be found easily the next time and to prevent them from rusting and going bad. They just throw their tools in, maybe a toolbox or something like that. And the next time they need it, it may or may not be available to them or anything. Some people treat tools like throwaways. They just toss it, and if it works the next time, fine. If it doesn't, they'll just buy a new one. That's the way our service members are treated. And so if you come back I'm very grateful to God that I didn't actually experience some of the things that we hear so often about people who served in our armed forces, where they go overseas and then come back and they have PTSD or other physical ailments. And they just aren't able to get the kind of care and treatment that they deserve. They're not able to get it because we have a system that is government-based for the care of our veterans once they return home. And some of them, when they stay on active duty, that at least there's the opportunity to get much better care. But when they are, they're just out in the civilian world. And if they stick with the VA, it's just bad. And that's not right. And the point that Rick Barry is making is that we have the money to take care of them, but we're currently spending it on illegal aliens. And God bless the people who are living in these war-torn, gang-infested countries to the south of us, but we are not responsible for them first. We already send aid to help. We already do a myriad of different things that our federal government does to help us and assist these people. But our service members, they are our actual responsibility. They have served this country and they deserve better than what they're getting from us. And it's funny to hear something like this, like funny, interesting to hear him say this as a basketball Hall of Famer, so not someone who spent time in the military, but the point that he makes is valid. Also that we spend money caring for illegal aliens when we don't actually have our own budget in order, that we borrow money to give an aid to other countries that hate us. And so before someone says it, we do that because if we don't give them the aid, then, blah, 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 ... XYZ. I don't care what you're saying. So they want to go to war if we don't give them money. So we're paying them so they won't go to war with us. What's that all about? We're paying them so they won't do terrorism? So they won't kill their own people? What good reason do we have to borrow the money though? Even if you can make a proper justification for giving foreign aid to despots and countries that are really pits, that they don't improve. We give them billions of dollars. They don't improve at all. The circumstances for the citizens who live there do not improve. But how can you justify borrowing it to give to them? Why don't we just entice the countries that we're borrowing the money from to give the money directly to the countries we're borrowing it for? Now, we're borrowing for a lot more than that. Obviously, we have our unfunded liabilities, which are our, people call them entitlements, but they're things that Americans paid money into to receive, like Social Security. You've paid into that. That money is yours. It hasn't been invested properly. And so you're getting money back with a return that also that return money is borrowed. Why are we not focused on that? And so that's why we're calling today's show Impeachment Talk Distracts a Nation on the Brink of Insolvency. Everyone's busy doing whatever we do. And for those of us who are in the political arena, talking about political things, those in Christian worldview and Christian radio, we're talking about some of everything. But the issue of our insolvency continues to be one that we avoid. So the Republicans were in charge for 2 years of President Trump's presidency, so far his administration, and they did not address the budget. They also didn't address illegal immigration. I mean, because I wish we could just say this was the Democrats' problem. And I love how now it's being framed as the Democrats are being obstructionists. Of course they are. They want the votes. But what about when the Republicans were in charge? Oh, okay. Yeah. They weren't in charge enough. That's what we always hear. On the budget, it's the same thing. Chip Roy, Republican from Texas, and Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, John Rose, Republican from Tennessee, all objected to a disaster relief bill the House in the House of Representatives that Congress refused to offset with cuts to other spending programs because they love to spend borrowed money and they make believe that they're actually balancing the budget somehow when they're really not. According to the U.S. debt clock, the national debt is over $22 trillion. Every citizen owes, every U.S. citizen, that means your kids owe it. So this is household debt. If you got 4 people in your household, multiply it by this number I'm about to give you. Every U.S. citizen owes $67,910 in debt, and each taxpayer, because the kids aren't yet taxpayers, are they? Taxpayers are on the hook for $181,885. Now, Brian Reidel of the Manhattan Institute sounded the alarm when he wrote on October 10th of 2018 that annual budget deficits are projected to soon surpass $1 trillion, on their way to $2 trillion or even $3 trillion in the next 10 to 15 years. That's the annual deficit. Social Security and Medicare face a combined $100 trillion cash deficit over the next 30 years, which would push the national debt to nearly 200% of the gross domestic product. And we're talking about impeaching a president because he didn't commit collusion with the Russians. All right. Marinate on that for a minute. We'll be back with more. We'll have John York from the Heritage Foundation. I'm Stacy Washington.
When an abortion-minded woman walks into a preborn pregnancy center, she encounters love and compassion and gets to meet her baby by ultrasound.
And I was like, I'm going to go to the abortion clinic. And I already had my mind made up.
This mom didn't make it to the abortion clinic. Instead, God led her to a preborn center.
And the lady is giving me my ultrasound. She's like making these weird faces. And then she's like, it's 2. And I'm like, I just start crying. I start texting my friends and like, I can't.
The Ministry of Preborn was able to help this mom save not just 1 life, but 2 through ultrasounds. Preborn centers help save babies' lives and souls. Preborn runs and leads Christian pregnancy centers all over the country. To find out more, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com, or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. I have a friend who was greatly wronged by a man he respected and trusted. He felt used and manipulated. Soon bitterness took residence in his heart. The more he thought about what this man had done to him, the more he despised him. In fact, he struggled with hatred toward him, and it became apparent to all around him. You know, associating with people means we run the risk of being offended. God's going to hold that person responsible for what they do, but he also holds us responsible for our reaction. We're never free to repay evil for evil. To hate or despise someone is to commit murder in our hearts. In fact, that's one of the things that God says he hates in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 and 17. The text says, there are 6 things which the Lord hates, yes, 7 which are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. There's a broader principle here. God hates hands that shed innocent blood. I doubt that there are too many of us that are going out there trying to shed someone's blood. But perhaps we have done that in our hearts. Perhaps our attitude toward the mistreatment and manipulation we've experienced has driven us to think things that are not right and to harbor hatred in our hearts and mind. Or we might be the individual who intentionally is going out to use someone, to deceive someone, to manipulate them. God hates mistreatment of the innocent. Furthermore, hatred is a form of murder. We don't want to go there. Sometime you may want to read Matthew chapter 5, verse 22. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Cry out to God to help you forgive and love those who have hurt you. Don't abuse, mistreat, or manipulate people.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Stacy Washington here, 2018 Journalist of the Year for the Second Amendment Foundation. Also, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thanks for making your home here today. We are so excited with our next guest, who is a frequent joiner of the program. It's John York, PhD, Policy Analyst at the B. Kenneth Simon Center for Principles and Politics at the Heritage Foundation. John, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
You know, it's good to talk to you, and this is one of those ones that really it burns me up when I see these bills that come through with names like the Honest Ads Act, which just dupes Americans into thinking this has got to be something I can support. You know, I'm so used to everyone saying, oh, you got to be against this, you got to be against that. You hear something like the Honest Ads Act, you're like, finally, something I can support. But this is not that.
No, it's not. So it's being billed as, who said don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? That was one of Obama's people. I'm forgetting now who. But anyway,
Rahm Emanuel, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think it's Rahm Emanuel. This is an example of that, where, you know, Russian interference with the election is giving gloss to something Democrats have wanted to do for a very long time, which is to apply the sort of regulations that cover television and radio advertisements to the Internet. The problem is what an ad on the Internet is it's a lot harder to say. It's not a medium like broadcast where there's clear lines between what's paid and what's not oftentimes. and so it would be very difficult to make a one-for-one conversion of the laws that apply to these other broadcast means and the Internet. And anyway, it's not really clear that would address the problem. It's not as though Russian trolls were paying for a whole lot of advertisements such that you could tell them to stick on a paid-for ad, and they say paid for, Russian intelligence agency. That's not going to happen. The law purports to be about one thing, but is really aimed at us, not aimed at Russia. So, yeah, it's a classic Rahm Emanuel not letting a good crisis go to waste, and it's shepherding in stuff, a way of tamping down domestic speech when it's really purporting to be about foreign interference. Not a good idea. Not a good bill.
Okay, so I know this is totally rhetorical, but I can't let you be here and not ask you this. Why are Democrats so bent on being underhanded in the ways that they fight back against ideas on the right? And I mean, I want to be really clear here. It's not that I don't understand their desire to vanquish us on the field of battle and drive our women and children before them in submission. I get it. They want to win.
Right.
But what is going on with this idea that the only way they can win is by doing stuff like underhanded, dirty dealing, like calling something the Honest Ads Act, where it will only impact conservatives so they can try to stop us from basically exercising the same rights that they exercise?
Well, they just know where their advantages lie. They know that they have that we're always facing a headwind when it comes to print media and broadcast media, because so many people in the mainstream media are on the left. I mean, Stacy on the right. There aren't that many of us, right? No,
there aren't. And I'll just full disclosure. There aren't that many of us, and those of us that are out here, you are on a lot of mainstream television and you do a lot of writing and a lot of work. But if I go out and ask a garden variety liberal if they know who you are, they're not going to know who you are. Same thing with me. A lot of people on the right know who I am, but I'm certainly not as famous as our biggest names. And many, many liberals have not only never heard of me, they don't even like black women on Christian radio talking about conservative politics. That's such a mind blower. They probably think, oh, you're just pulling my leg. That's not real. So we really are facing, it's more than headwinds. It's like we're running into a tornado.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the Democrats, whenever they can propose things that sound modest on their face, but they know that when they drive out other voices, be it through campaign finance, quote-unquote reform, when they prevent people who don't agree with them necessarily from buying advertisement time that they can give away for free, that the left can give away for free to whomever they like, they know they're empowering people who already agree with them, which is to say the people who own NBC and MSNBC and ABC and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right down the line. Insofar as they can keep out those counter-narratives, it only boosts the voice of groups that are going to be singing their praises.
Yeah, and they don't just have the groups. Like, I used to really kind of be concerned about Think Progress and places like that, and they are dastardly effective groups. But why would I worry about a group like that when they've been infighting with each other? If they destroy each other, it matters not, because when I turn on the news tonight, I'm going to get the leftist slant on my local news station and most of the cable news, except for obviously Fox News is there. You got One American News Now. You have a few spots, but comparatively speaking, they're winning that side. Yet they're still doing this. And it will work with millions of Americans who will just read Honest Ads Act and they'll be like, that's totally something we should support.
Yeah, absolutely. And these bills kind of work in two ways. One, they just simply drive money out of politics. That's the biggest impact. But the second impact is they make it so complicated and the rules so convoluted that people are afraid to even do what's legally permissible, because they don't really know what the law entails or whether or not they're opening themselves up to a legal challenge or a fight with the Federal Election Commission or the FCC. So it muddies the water and creates a chilling effect where people are censoring themselves from even speaking in the ways that they're permitted to. So it's a twofold problem. I mean, a system that's more simple would be much better, than adding these layers of complexity and confusion as the quote-unquote Honest Ads Act would do.
So what would be helpful? Because I know one thing that I get accused of is you just oppose everything. You oppose every new bill. You oppose every kind of, anything that would improve anything for the government. And that's not exactly true, but I do tend to be like, oh, new bill, I probably won't be in favor of that. Like there's almost nothing that can be proposed that I'm automatically in favor of. So what could we do? If we needed to make some changes in the way that ads are disclosed, who paid for it, et cetera, is there anything that needs to be done, or is this just them trying to further clamp down on us and that's it?
I think there are things that could be done in terms of transparency generally. Like if you're to go, I'm kind of a geek, so I look at these lobbying disclosure forms from time to time. Not very many Americans do. I do. It's very difficult to tell who's asking for what in Washington. It would be good to have lobbying disclosure forms that actually disclose what people are lobbying for. That would be a good place to start. We know where the vast bulk of money goes when it comes to campaigns, but what lobbyists are doing, and that's by far the biggest chunk of money being spent by corporations and nonprofits, et cetera, that would be good on the transparency end. But then also, counterintuitively, I think it would be better when it comes to campaign finance to open things up. What we have now is pretty low caps on what you can give directly to a candidate, but no limits at all on what you can give to a super PAC. So as a result, a lot of money flows to super PACs, and relatively less money goes to political parties and campaigns than used to, or that otherwise might. It'd be better if people could do with their money what they please, and they could give to a candidate directly if they want. Because there's really nothing special about super PACs. Why should they have this enormous advantage? And if you look at some of the most misleading and kind of gross ads that have been run over the years, mostly by super PACs, because they're creatures of an hour too. They haven't been at it for a long time. Sometimes they're a little more amateurish, and anywhere they're going to go away. Their reputation isn't going to be tarnished because they're not going to exist in the next election cycle. So I think in a way, candidates getting money and spending it directly for themselves is safer, and I don't think they should be subject to these really quite low limits. If what it means is super PACs are going to be out there dominating the airwaves as their surrogate.
Okay, John. So I saw a story this morning about how it's really these super PACs that you're talking about often have the ones that you're talking about that are fly by night that run the ads that are kind of, the not so great ones. Well, they actually
the Mitt Romney. Remember when Mitt Romney was accused of killing that
that
factory worker's wife? That was a super PAC ad.
Yes. Garbage like that.
Right.
But these organizations also have some. They have some like pretty low numbers of how much of the money that goes into them actually goes to the stated cause. Isn't that the case also, that they're kind of like they're not as tidy with their spending as some of the other organizations that have been around longer that have, like you said, the reputational value to protect?
Yeah, I haven't really followed the internal financial dealings of these groups particularly much, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's true, because they have to stand up a pretty big infrastructure, and then. A lot of times you sort of learn along the way. The national parties have been at it for a long, long time, and they sort of know what's feasible, what's not. They can, tell whether or not they're getting bilked or not by a vendor. Whereas a super PAC that's only existed for a short amount of time and doesn't have a lot of experience may find it getting bilked, getting hoodwinked by people it's contracting with. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're getting not a lot of value for their money relative to other spenders, maybe like candidates or political parties.
So in the end, we do want some more transparency. We don't want this Honest Ads Act, obviously, but we want some more transparency. Mm-hmm. And then the super PAC. So it's one thing that I never hear, I rarely hear people say, oh, we need the super PACs to go away, because the super PACs do serve a purpose, which is, like you said, if there's an ad you want to run that you don't want associated with your organization, but you do want it out there, even if it's going to destroy the super PAC's reputation, it's just like it's a one-off, it's a bomb you're setting off. you're going to send that through the super PAC. You're not going to send it through the candidates committee or someplace closer to home. And so because they serve that purpose, it means that they're much less likely to be actually done away with.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think super PACs should be done away with at all. They play an extremely valuable role. I mean, if you have a general political message to get out there, or you want to have clear control over the message that you want to project when it comes to a candidate, then by all means, super PACs are your instrument. They're what you want to use. But for a lot of people, they just want to support a candidate. They should be able to do that too. So it should be a both and, not an either or. And to the extent that super PACs really just look like any other kind of speech, we're not going to cap that. The Supreme Court has made very clear capping super PAC donations is clearly unconstitutional. I agree. So what can we do? Well, open it up a little bit. Allow people to give more money to candidates and national parties if that's what they want to do. And then, of course, allow them to get to super PACs if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I like that idea. So
good. I'm glad I got one convert.
Well, you know, I tend to defer to those who have the expertise in that area. I just know I see a lot of emails fundraising, and some of the emails that I get. First of all, it's one group, maybe it's a master group, like the big grandfather group of them all, that shares the emails, because all I have to do is give my email out once, and then I'm getting 8 fundraising emails from different organizations. And some of them, the title of them, like it says it's coming from Newt Gingrich. Well, I happen to know Newt Gingrich isn't emailing me asking me for money, because I've asked him to come on the show and I've never heard a response back. So if he's not coming on the show, I doubt if he would ask me for money. And it's the same thing. Like Sarah Huckabee Sanders wants you to give. I got a letter in the mail that said it was for Melania Trump. And I'm like, I know this isn't for Melania Trump. I just know it isn't. So, you know, there's some of that going on. But I know that there is some great work that can be done with the super PACs. Like they're able to kind of marshal large groups of people because their email lists are so large, and get people to move on issues, which, you know, sometimes it's harder for candidates who are newer or different state organizations to do, like little organizations in the state of Missouri. They might have the mailing list, but it's kind of dead. People don't really respond, where the super PACs seem to have the more active people that they're interacting with.
No doubt. I mean, super PACs play, especially right now, where you do have these caps on candidates and parties, and even if you were to get rid of those caps, having super PACs is extremely valuable, because you're exactly right. It collects up a lot of people who would have a difficult time just on their own paying to get their ideas out there. It collects a bunch of like-minded people, and is able to sort of counteract these media narratives, these mass media narratives that we're talking about earlier. Without these super PACs aggregating capital and sort of pushing back and being able to make very, very expensive ad buys, because the expense goes up and up every year, we really would be left with a situation where we're beholden on the mass media to tell us what candidate X and candidate Y are for and what issues are really most important in an election. We don't want that situation. The super PACs being able to spend as they do is much, much better than that alternative, for sure, no doubt.
Okay, so and I'm hoping that for, you know, all of the listeners here at American Family Radio, we're getting a better grip on what this is really about. And obviously, part of the reason we're talking today is that we're exposing the Honest Ads Act as just another farce that really isn't worth the time or the paper that it's being printed on. And it should never get through Congress. It might, because the Democrats control there, but it certainly shouldn't get through the Senate.
So I want to just, if we have time, just push back on this idea that the scale. While it's important that Russia attempted to hijack our election, no doubt, it's important to realize the scale in comparison to the total amount of internet content out there. So they disseminated something like 2.1 million tweets, which sounds like quite a lot, except for that 500 million tweets are sent out every day. They purchased about 3,000 Facebook advertisements, which is not a particularly huge amount when you consider the budget of Facebook. I think they spent $100,000 on social media ads, and it's just not a tremendous amount at all.
Perfect. Well, I think you encapsulated that, and I'm so glad you're doing the research and staying on top of this. John York, PhD for the Heritage Foundation. Thank you, sir, for your time today.
Really do whom they choose, then I think we can count that as a win.
All right, perfect. All right, we will talk to you again soon. Have a great one. We'll be back with more after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
When you're committed to your spouse, you find that over time you learn about him or her, but you can also learn about his or her family. The more I interact with Tony's family, the more I understood how Tony was wired.
One of the things I learned about Lauren and her family was that her family liked to talk with each other. If I was going to learn to love Lauren effectively, I would need to learn to open the doors of communication with her as well.
Learn as much as you can about your spouse through their family. It'll make things easier for both of you to handle and appreciate the differences in each other.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
My drinking got so bad that my friends would drag me into my parents' house unconscious. But here at Teen Challenge, I'm finally alcohol-free. And if you think I'm happy, you should see my parents.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adults at Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Romans 13:14 says, "Clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the desires of the flesh." So what are you clothing yourself with? Whether we realize it or not, what we allow in our temples affects our way of living. We can't feed ourselves junk and expect to hear from the Lord. Clothe yourself with the righteousness of God at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Media Minute with Howard Kurtz.
A whole bunch of Hollywood studios is threatening to boycott Georgia after the state adopted a restrictive law that seeks to ban abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected, which can be as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. Now, these include Time Warner and HBO, CBS, NBC Universal, AMC, Netflix, Sony, and Disney. In fact, Disney CEO Bob Iger was out front of this. He said, "I think many people who work for us will not want to work there, and we have to heed their wishes in that regard." Now, it's no secret that Hollywood is mostly made up of liberal people in the entertainment business, that they are mostly pro-choice, that they would, of course, abhor something like the Georgia law. At the same time, this law being more restrictive than many others raises the question of whether the state would feel an economic impact if it goes through. I don't think these studios really want to bail on Georgia. I think they just want to get the law changed. With your Media Minute, Howie Kurtz, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Millions of people are flowing through Mexico. That's unacceptable. Millions and millions of people are coming right through Mexico. It's a 2,000-mile journey, and they're coming up to our border. And our Border Patrol, which is incredible, they're apprehending them. But our laws are bad because the Democrats don't want to pass laws that could be passed in 15 minutes, that could be passed quickly. In one day, it could change. But even beyond the laws, Mexico shouldn't allow millions of people to try and enter our country. And they could stop it very quickly. And I think they will. And if they won't, we're going to put tariffs on. And every month, those tariffs go from 5% to 10% to 15% to 20% and then to 25%. And what will happen then is all of those companies that have left our country and gone to Mexico are going to be coming back to us. And that's okay. That's okay. But I think Mexico will step up and do what they should have been done. And I don't want to hear that Mexico is run by the cartels and the drug lords and the coyotes. I don't want to hear about that. A lot of people are saying that. Mexico has something to prove. But I don't want to hear that they're run by the cartels. You understand. You report on it all the time. A lot of people do. That would be a terrible thing. Mexico should step up and stop this onslaught, this invasion into our country, John.
Yeah, they should. That was the president talking to John Roberts of Fox News about stopping the invasion. And it's so simple, really. It's laws we already have on the books. It's a partnership with Mexico that is so beneficial to them. They can't afford to lose it. Why not just do what the president is asking and take care of the invasion? Just stop it. Now, and I don't know if you guys ever do this. Sometimes the president of Mexico, the current one and then the one before him, they'll be on foreign language television talking about something, and they'll get asked about the, relationship with the United States, the trade relationship with the United States, or they'll be asked about the illegal immigration and the fact that so many Mexicans come here to live instead of staying in their home country, which is a statement about how badly their country bites. You see what I'm saying? Like, I get people they get angry at me for saying that. But if Mexico was so awesome, then why do y'all need so many of our jobs there? If Mexico is such a fantastic thing, why do so many Mexicans choose to live here while celebrating being Mexican? It's like saying, yeah, I work for this company that's really awful, and I want to go work somewhere else. And you go work at a new place, and you say about the old company, yeah, but it was the best place ever. Well, if it was the best place ever, why didn't you just stay there? How about that? Like, you can't have it both ways, and you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Either Mexico's fantastic and you love living there and it is the best place on earth to live and Cinco de Mayo all day long, or you're here in America because it's better here in America and Mexico has some work to do. Same thing with those other countries. But back to the issue of whether or not they're helping. They're not helping. And when their presidents are on the news, they often will say something like, well, but there's a human right or human rights issue with people needing to have the ability to immigrate to countries where they can be safe. And so he's in essence saying that while he respects America's desire to have a southern border that's sealed up and for Mexico not to facilitate an invasion, they have a duty to people who look like themselves to offer them the opportunity to travel through Mexico to get to America, as they're able to do, because they just have the luck of proximity, and the other countries, they don't. So they can't really, it's a human rights issue. It's a humanitarian issue. And when you hear him say that, you kind of think to yourself, so you're saying that El Salvador and Honduras, for example, are awful. And Mexico is better, but the United States is the best. So rather than keeping them there with you in Mexico and burdening yourself or stopping them from coming in altogether, because you can't do that, you're saying they really just need to go to America. That has to be something that we put a stop to, right? We have to say to them, look, we have enough of our internal issues with Democrats and Republicans who refuse to admit that our border needs to be sealed up without you helping to facilitate it by sending the people, by allowing them to move through your country. So it's more than one issue, but the part of it that has to do with Mexico does need to be dealt with. So that brings us to this story, which this is the good news part of today. I know it's not Friday, but I'll take good news every day of the week. It's a federal judge in Washington, D.C. ruled yesterday against the House Democrats. Now, the House Democrats actually filed suit to block the Trump administration from reappropriating money from the Defense Department and other sources to fund the border wall. So here's how it broke out. President Trump declared a national emergency back in February, you remember that, and then reprogrammed almost $6 billion to build border wall. In addition to the $1.4 billion appropriation that Congress authorized for border barriers, the administration sequentially reallocated $600 million from the Treasury Department's forfeiture fund, $2.5 billion from Defense Department counter-narcotics activities, and $3.6 billion from military construction. So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Democrats, and they actually went to court to challenge the latter two reallocations. So the Treasury, the Defense Department counter-narcotic activity money of $2.5 billion and the military construction money of $3.6 billion. That's the part that they sued over. The suit accuses President Trump of violating the Administrative Procedure Act, APA, and the Constitution's Appropriations Clause, which gives Congress the power of the purse. Now, the courts have allowed legislatures to bring cases alleging institutional injury before, but the judge in this case actually said that those few instances involved episodes in which legislative power was effectively nullified. The judge said precedent, historical practice, and current conditions show that Congress has many tools to block whatever steps the administration takes to reprogram money for the border wall. And he said above all of those things, Congress could override Trump's veto of a resolution overturning his national emergency declaration. Congress could also hold hearings on administrative spending priorities, amend appropriation laws to prohibit the use of federal dollars for border wall construction, expand remedies for private parties who sue the government to block the project. The availability of these institutional remedies shows that there is no complete nullification of the House's power. Now, Congress has several political arrows in its quiver to counter perceived threats to its sphere of power. These tools show that this lawsuit is not a last resort for the House, and this fact is also exemplified by the many other cases across the country challenging the administration's planned construction of the border wall. So those are quotes from his opinion or his decision on the lawsuit. So it's a win for the Trump administration, but there's a federal judge in California who has temporarily prohibited the government from shifting funds from other programs to pay for the border wall in May. So the Department of Justice welcomed yesterday's decision, and of course the other cases will percolate on through. It is a victory, but it's a hollow one for me because I feel that, as this judge noted, there are remedies for Congress, and the reason Congress doesn't take those remedies is because they can't get them through the Senate. So they could pass them through the House, nullifying the president's actions or what have you, but the Senate would never vote to ratify those because it's controlled by the Republicans. And beyond that, these are all distractionary tactics, I believe, to remove the will of the American people, who every poll shows Americans want less immigration, and they definitely want the border sealed. Every poll shows that Americans are very, very, very philanthropically minded and willing to give, but they don't think we should have huge numbers of illegal aliens pouring into our cities and rural areas. And the proof is from a couple of months ago when the president said he would begin to ship illegal aliens in large numbers to places like San Francisco and California and Florida. He started naming off some places. He said liberal enclaves, and then they started using words like punishment and et cetera, which shows me they don't see illegal aliens as a net good. They see them as a net negative. So I'm interested to see how this continues to develop. Call lines are open. I should have mentioned that at the beginning of this segment. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. You can call into the show and talk about anything we've had on so far this hour. And I also wanted to point you to stacyontheright.com. Check it out. We have cool content up over there. And you can also share our 60-second spots, which you can find at SoundCloud. But I have a link to all of that over at stacyontheright.com. T-shirts are available for purchase as well, hoodies, etc., cups, the mugs. And we're still working on some other cool stuff, but for now, that's plenty. That's plenty. So call on 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So we had really interesting, and I just keep thinking about the people who were yelling and screaming. And that's one of the things that sometimes when you say, I want people to come out and pray outside of the abortion clinic, a lot of what happens is people are afraid. They're like, oh, I don't want to go out there because they're worried about getting yelled at or accosted or what have you. But you have to remember from the movie Unplanned, if you went to go see that, you know that what happens is you're waging war. You're out there, you're praying. So it doesn't look like much. It looks like nothing is happening. But inside the clinic, it's pandemonium. And people see you praying outside the clinic and they'll turn around and they won't go in. They won't drive into the parking lot. Meanwhile, Thrive has their bus out there that it's a fully operational medical center where you can get pregnancy tests and mammogram and an ultrasound if you already know you're expecting, and it's all free and no pressure. And if you decide to leave that van and go to the Planned Parenthood parking lot and make an appointment and you go through with it and have an abortion, you can still go back to that Thrive van afterwards for post-care. You can plug into them and I'd like someone to pray with me. I'd like a Bible study. Whatever. There's no, well, you went to Planned Parenthood, so we can't help you anymore. Nope. They're still there to help you. They're still there. They're not going to stop because you decided to make that decision. They're there to help women. So it was really interesting today. A lot of great people out there. There were quite a few people who were so upset by the sight of a bunch of us just standing around with signs that they hurled profanity. One lady got out of the side of her car, and as the car was driving by, she sat out of the window with her head above the car and screamed profanities as she was driving by. And some of the people that I was standing near were saying, "Oh, wow, she's really angry, and look, she's just wow." And I said, "Yeah, she's hurting. Something's going wrong." And one of the ladies who was there, she was like, "What do you mean she's hurting?" I said, "Well, you don't scream profanities when you're happy and content and satisfied with yourself. Seeing us here has hurt her in some way, and that's why she's screaming those expletives and all of that." And it's the truth. It's the same thing I think about the people who send the hate mail to me, which it goes to my spam box, and then I'll see it when I'm looking for a real email. And I just skim through and I see just, it gives you the first 2 or 3 words. And I see those and I see it's nothing but profanity. And I know that that's because they've heard something on the show and it's pointed out something that's going on within them. That's what's upsetting them. And then they're upset by that. So then they want to lash out, which doesn't hurt me at all. It doesn't stop anything that I'm doing at all. I know all of the curse words. I've seen them before. I've seen all the different combinations. Right? I told y'all I used to be a professional cursor when I was on active duty in the Air Force. Back in my younger years, I was on active duty. And I knew all of the best combinations because my dad was a cop. Yeah. So you're not shocking me at all. And nothing is happening because of that. But I know you're hurting. That's what we know when I see that. Call lines are open, 866-963-2037. Jerry in Mississippi. Hey, thanks for calling the show today. Hey, Jerry. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Stacy. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. I was calling in regards to the Equality Act. My question is, when will the Senate pick this up as far as, voting for the passage or the blocking of this Equality Act or whatever?
So H.R. 5, the Equality Act, I actually don't know when they're planning on moving that forward. So it's not going to get through the Senate, first of all. There will be a couple of Republican senators who think they want to jump in on that, but I don't think they're going to have the votes to pass it in the Senate, which means it's dead on arrival. So it's really just something for the Democrats to use to run on for their candidates. It's not really a serious effort. I think we have time for one super quick call. Can we go to Trey in Massachusetts, I think? No? All right. Well, hold on. If you're in the call queue, we have less than a minute left here. We can still get to you. And I also want to just, again, you guys, you totally have to be excited about the tariff that the president has announced for Mexico. Not because we love tariffs. And please don't be under the impression that I think tariffs are awesome. I think the president is using them as a tool of the last resort to get something done on our behalf that he promised to do when he was running. And I really like a promise keeper. Can I just say that? Can I just tell you that? I like a promise keeper. I like it when someone says to me, this is what I will do, and then they do it. Or if they say, I won't do that, they don't do it. That's honorable. And that's something we are kind of losing our grip on, and we need to get that back. Is he successful yet? Not yet, but he's working on it. I'll take that any day. All right, I'm Stacy Washington. This is Stacy on the Right. OneNewsNow.com news and information up next. If you're leaving us, God bless from the heartland. If you're sticking around, I'll be right back.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Being there is half the battle. 1milliondads.com exists to help Christian fathers to be present and intentional in the lives of their children. Our hope is to wake up the fearsome wonder that is the mighty man of God and restore him to his role as leader, teacher, and counselor. Visit 1milliondads.com. 1milliondads.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. 2 former aides to President Trump have been told not to hand over records to Congress despite a congressional subpoena. Jared Halpern has more from Capitol Hill.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler says the White House instructed Hope Hicks and Annie Donaldson not to turn over records in response to subpoenas issued last month. Hicks, the chairman says, has agreed to turn over some documents related to her time with the Trump campaign. Donaldson was a deputy White House counsel. Hicks served as communications director. Hicks is now an executive vice president and chief communications officer for Fox Corporation, the parent company of Fox News. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Vice President Mike Pence visited the Community Food Bank of eastern Oklahoma today while on his visit surveying the massive storm damage.
I just want to say how grateful we are for all the members of the law enforcement community, all of the first responders who've been working 24/7 through all of these tremendous storms and challenges. Our hearts grieve for the loss of life.
President Trump declared a major disaster in 3 Oklahoma counties that were devastated by flooding, tornadoes, and other severe storms. The Equality Act awaits action in the U.S. Senate, where it's not expected to be brought up for a vote by Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Still, Sarah Perry, a Family Research Council, says the measure granting civil rights protections for sexual orientation and gender identity did have some bipartisan support in the House, and it would not take many Republicans to pass it in the Senate. Peter Sprigg of the Family Research Council has more on the Equality Act.
It would put back in jeopardy people like Jack Phillips, the baker from Colorado, who exercised a conscientious objection to preparing cakes for a same-sex wedding ceremony. Those are examples of the implications people don't think about. There is no religious exemption in the Equality Act, and not only is there no religious exemption, there is an explicit overriding, if you will, of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the federal RFRA, which was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support back in the 1990s and signed into law enthusiastically by President Bill Clinton.
Perry and Sprigg made their comments on Washington Watch. Twitter has a new artificial intelligence.
Fox on Tech. Twitter has acquired a London startup that specializes in artificial intelligence that could be used to help the social media site fight fake news. The company is called Fabula AI, and according to their own website, they say their geometric deep learning has shown a best-in-class success rate for detecting fake news, able to detect irregular structures like graphs and surfaces. Several months ago, TechCrunch did a deep dive on Fabula, which has its algorithms aimed at both disinformation and misinformation. And one way the system has helped in finding fake news, humans. The software is able to monitor people and how they share content to find patterns that can help stop the spread of phony stories. TechCrunch found that Fabula's AI was able to spot fake news with an accuracy of 93%. It's not known if the program will be used on Twitter to stop the spread of misinformation. Twitter only saying they're working to improve the health of the conversation on the website and finding ways to stop spam and abuse. With Fox on Tech, I'm Brett Larson, Fox News.
And drugstore chain CVS wants to handle more of your health needs. Here's Jenny Casolo.
CVS wants you to visit its stores for some routine health services. You'll see more health hubs at CVS in the next couple of years. It's expanding its number of clinics to 1,500 by the end of 2021. CVS planned to provide more services at its drugstores when it purchased health insurer Aetna. Now the hubs will offer nutrition counseling and blood pressure screenings and a care concierge who will direct you to health services. CVS has plans to convert 50 stores in Houston, Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Tampa this year.
More news and information next hour. You can also stay up to speed by visiting our website, onenewsnow.com. That's onenewsnow.com.
Stand by. The BSAC radio show spotlights Christian rap artists.
Never try to put me on the pedestal. The Lord is working on me. I'm getting better still.
Hear in-depth interviews and news about upcoming releases.
What's your motivation? Jesus, he's a motivation.
BSAC is the Biblically Sound Artist Coalition. Don't miss the BSAC radio show. Saturdays from 10 a.m. to noon Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You slap on tariffs to change the behavior of a trading partner, and it looks like the president got their attention. But he means business, and you know it. He's been completely consistent on this issue for 4 years now.
He's absolutely deadly serious. In fact, I fully expect these tariffs to go on to at least the 5% level on June 10th. The president is deadly serious about fixing the situation at the southern border. They've got tremendously strong immigration laws, much stronger than ours. They have the ability to do things that we cannot. Congress will not help us fix our laws, so we're turning to Mexico to help us fix the situation on the border.
Now he is putting some measures in place that hopefully will get them to engage more so that they will start to help us in this process. We can't continue down the path that we're on. We can't continue to operate as a sovereign country with no borders and without enforcement.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey there. Welcome back to the program. So good to be with you. Listen, we have a fantastic hour 2 for you. Zach Morgan, who is an attorney with the Institute for Free Speech, he's going to join us and talk about Ted Cruz, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually getting together to do a bill together. They're a bill banning lobbying. Shocker, the ban would violate the First Amendment, but for some reason, Ted Cruz is on board. I'm actually shocked by that, because if there's anybody who knows the Constitution, it's him. Yet here he is doing this. And then, of course, a host on CBS said that the DCC campaign policy protects older white men. And this is a problem that, keeps cropping up for the left side of the political aisle, which is there's like this tendency that you have to vilify old white men. But then in doing so, you're working with white men, because white men are in workplaces as well. And it's really kind of unfair, because, white guys can't help the fact that they're white guys, just like I can't help the fact that I'm a black woman. We're people. And I think we should be focused more on the people aspect of it, instead of constantly beating this dead horse of who's permanently tanned and who isn't. It's just exhausting, right? So now we've got this audio from Mick Mulvaney turning back to immigration. And an update. If you missed the news at the top of the hour from onenewsnow.com, check out the website. It's great information over there. We had a caller asking about H.R. 5, the Equality Act. Well, that bill has actually, 5/20/2019, the bill has already passed the House and moved on to the Senate. It was received there and read twice and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. And then there have been 2 roll call votes. So it has passed the House. We have to continue to pray that it will not pass the Senate. It's garbage. And of course, the president would veto it. I don't think they have a veto-proof majority in any case, but still, there it is. That's the update on it. And I found that at congress.gov. I was listening to the news at the top of the hour, though, and I heard them giving an update on it as well. But again, if you want to know what the status of a bill is, you can type in congress.gov, and then in the search bar, you can type in the name of the bill, H.R. 5. You don't even have to type in its moniker, Equality Act, and then an update will pop up for you. If you want to check any other bills out, that's the way you can get it done. Okay. I was checking to see if we still had callers. Now, let's listen to Mick Mulvaney. He says the question is, if the tariffs actually go into effect here in, what is today, the 4th? So in 6 days, if the tariffs actually hit and there's a 5% tariff on Mexican goods, how can the president measure, and the Trump administration measure, whether or not Mexico is complying with the requests that have been made in order to stop the tariffs? And Mick Mulvaney actually had an answer to that. Here he is in number one.
There's a couple different things they can do. And in fact, Bob Lighthizer is meeting with Mexicans this week. Mike Pompeo is meeting with the Mexican representatives this week, along with Mr. Kushner, I believe. And we're going to talk with them about specific things they can do. And they know these things. They can secure their southern border with Guatemala. And most of the people who are coming in through Mexico now are not Mexicans. They are from Guatemala and El Salvador, other countries south of Mexico. That border is only a quarter as long as the border with the United States. They could secure that border. They could go after their domestic terrorist organizations, their criminal organizations who are in the business of moving people across Mexico. Keep in mind, at any one time, there's 100,000 migrants in Mexico making their way up to the United States. And lastly, they could make Mexico a safe place for these people to claim asylum. Ordinarily, when you leave a country like El Salvador and you claim asylum, you do that in the first safe country in which you arrive. Mexico is safe. The people should be able to stay there if they're really seeking asylum. So the specific things that the Mexicans can do. Regarding the measure, we intentionally left the declaration sort of ad hoc so that we could work with the Mexicans to make sure that things did get better. So there's no specific target, there's no specific percentage, but things have to get better, they have to get dramatically better, and they have to get better quickly.
So that was really clear, wasn't it? Man, that Mick Mulvaney can get a whole lot into a quick soundbite. And he did that the whole interview. Every question he was asked, he had an answer. It was fast. It was direct. It was a nice soundbite. Well, here he is again. The question is, will Americans pay for the tariffs? Because that's what we're always told. Well, Americans can afford a tax increase, but Americans can't afford to pay any passed on costs for tariffs. Because the whole idea is that any amount that you tariff another country, they just increase the price of the goods and the Americans pay the tariff. Well, in the case of Mexico, if the cost of the goods are increased, then Americans will buy the goods from another source, right? Because is Mexico the only place we can buy anything? I don't think so. If the Mexican avocados are way more expensive than avocados from somewhere else, then the Americans will buy the cheaper avocados. It's that simple. Same thing with the cars. If the cars are tariffed here in the United States because Mexico refuses to comply, then those cars will be 5%, 10%, whatever the percentage is, more expensive than other brands of cars, which means Americans will say, well, this car looks like it's like more expensive than this one. I mean, have you not done that? You're looking for one kind of car. You realize that used and new, this car is in this price range and you want to be in this price range. So you start looking around for a car that's comparable. And unless you're totally married to that car brand, you're going to look for the car that has the options and suits your needs that is also in your price range. That is what will happen. So fewer cars will be purchased from there. But don't take it from me. Here's Mick Mulvaney in number two.
Two different answers to that. First of all, that's sort of, I get that. That's the economic orthodoxy that when tariffs go up, consumer prices go up. But the proof is in the pudding. There is no inflation. Prices have not gone up. We've put tariffs on China. We're putting tariffs on Mexico. And inflation is still under control. That's because that old-fashioned economic orthodoxy doesn't work when it's relatively easy to substitute other goods. Prices from China have gone up. American consumers have gone to products that are made in the United States, for example, that don't carry those tariffs. We think the same thing will happen here, and American consumers will not pay for the burden of these tariffs. Secondly, the second part to your answer is this, which is there's already a price associated with illegal immigration. American taxpayers are paying hundreds of billions of dollars for illegal immigrants. They're paying hundreds of billions of dollars for the drugs that come across the southern border. So there is already a cost associated with this that we are trying to get off of the backs of ordinary Americans. We've been very specific from the minute that this proclamation went out that this was an immigration matter. It is not a trade matter. So the USMCA is a trade discussion. That's ongoing. That's why Bob Lighthizer is meeting with his Mexican counterparts this week. This is an immigration matter, and the two are separate. We could solve one. We hope we solve both. We believe that the USMCA is a great deal for the United States of America. We think it's also a good deal for our Mexican and Canadian partners, and we hope that Congress would pass it. In fact, we believe very firmly that if Nancy Pelosi would simply give it a vote, it would pass.
So he gave a lot there. First of all, why hasn't the USMCTA come up for a vote in Congress? What does it harm Democrats to have a bill that actually helps American workers in myriad industries to be more competitive with our neighbors to the north and the south. This is one of those no-brainers for me. The same way that they want to do infrastructure because they feel like infrastructure helps all Americans, and it's one of the few bipartisan issues that have left because it involves the government handing out tons of taxpayer dollars with no strings attached. So they're all for it. The MCTA should be the same thing. The trade deal that the president has instituted, that he's gotten all these parties together and they've agreed, finally, that we are tired of being their piggy bank. Just because we're neighbors doesn't mean we owe them everything in our pocketbook. And Congress won't even give it a vote. They won't even give it an opportunity to go through. That's the kind of dastardly duplicity that we're facing right now in our political operations. That's why President Trump calls it a swamp. Because only in swampland would you be sitting up with something as good as the MCTA and it wouldn't come up for a vote. But they did vote. They actually passed this garbage H.R. 5 out of Congress. They passed it out of the House. They were able to get that garbage done, but they're not able to get the trade deal done, which improves the prospects for Americans. It's, what can I say? I'm over here like, what can I say? I'm a radio host. I'm supposed to have something to say about every little thing, but what can you say about that drama? Okay, so yesterday I mentioned the iTunes thing. iTunes is going away. I just want to give the quick update. If you hadn't heard about it, and if you're an Android user, this impacts you in like zero ways. Totally, you're out. You're off the hook. But if you do have an iPhone, apparently, what's going to happen is there are 3 apps that will replace iTunes. One is, it's basically Movies, Apple Music, and another one. Those apps are where you'll have to have those. Oh, and podcasts. So podcasts, Apple Music, and Apple Movies. Those will be where you can get things where you used to just go to iTunes to get them. Now, how this makes any sense, I don't know. How this makes things easier for users of Apple products, I don't know. How it improves the experience for app, I don't know. In fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't improve the experience because it's 3 additional apps you have to have. So if you're like me and you have to scroll through 3 pages on your phone of apps, it's 3 more individual apps you have to have on there and 3 more opportunities for them to collect your data, monitor all of your activities, and force you into buying things that, so you have to have this in order to buy this, that kind of stuff. So that's the update. I would hope that we would be moving to a place with Apple products that they would give some thought to what best helps their customers. But I also read in the release that the part of this is that they're moving away from the iPhone. So, the iPhone has almost complete market saturation. So why would they make a huge change to the iPhone or to like how central the iPhone is to their business model? Why would they get, millions of people to buy the iPhone, hundreds of millions of iPhones in America, and then say they're moving away from it? I don't get it. So a couple of quick news bites as we're going out of this segment. We have Zach Morgan, attorney for the Institute for Free Speech, joining us next segment. There's a story out. The Broward County Deputy Scott Peterson has actually been arrested for failure to act during the Parkland School massacre. His nickname was the Coward of Broward. He's the one who basically hid behind a police car door, and he could hear the shots inside. The kids were being murdered, and he was outside. So he's a former BSO deputy, Scott Peterson. He's been arrested. I mean, this is breaking news. Posted like just a few minutes ago. Disgraced former Broward Sheriff's Office Deputy Scott Peterson has been arrested for his failure to act during the Parkland school shooting that left 17 people dead and 17 others wounded. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement said Peterson, 56, is charged with 7 counts of child neglect, 3 counts of culpable negligence, and 1 count of perjury. The bill seeks to strip Scott Peterson of his benefits. That's a bill that's been put forward. And he's been deposed. And this arrest comes after 14 months of investigation by the FDLE. He's already resigned, but now they're talking about charging him with these things. He's outside while the shooting is going on. They have a video posted. I'll put this up on Facebook if you want to watch. All right, we'll be back with more after this. I'm Stacy Washington.
Here's Walker Wildman for Redeem Clean Laundry Products.
Not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use a multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean Laundry Products were developed by AFA supporters Len Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, over the years, I've written about how people in high-tax states have been migrating to low-tax states. Unfortunately, many politicians in those states want to argue that tax rates don't affect investment or even migration. But the latest data from the IRS demonstrates that once again we have tax migration. Between 2012 and 2015, a net of $8.5 billion in adjusted gross income left New Jersey and $6.2 billion left Connecticut. Illinois, for example, lost $13.6 billion. However, during that same period, Florida, with no state income tax, gained $39.3 billion in adjusted gross income. You can even see tax migration between high-tax states. As an editorial in the Wall Street Journal puts it, income flows down the tax gradient. New York lost a net of $850 million in adjusted gross income to New Jersey and Connecticut, but at the same time, New Jersey gave up $335 million to Pennsylvania. Now, it might be tempting for politicians wanting to raise taxes to write all of this tax migration off to merely an example of snowbird flight. After all, people have been moving from the Northeast to Florida for decades. But the examples I just cited show that it is more than just a migration to warmer climate. It is a migration to low-tax states. The tax migration, especially the affluent, have had a negative effect on state budgets. Revenues have fallen short in states like New Jersey, Illinois, and Connecticut. That has resulted in budget deficits that have forced legislatures to cut public services and even funds to local government. The local governments have responded by raising property taxes, thus increasing more tax migration. All of these facts and figures are a reminder that people vote with their feet when you tax their pocketbooks. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism. Viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. It is my pleasure to welcome good friend of the show, Zach Morgan. He's an attorney for the Institute for Free Speech. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zach.
Glad to be here, Stacy. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so let's talk about this. You've got Ted Cruz, probably one of the few men in America who has the entire Constitution and Bill of Rights memorized and understands all the underlying, points, and probably has memorized some of the Federalist Papers. And he's partnered together with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to put together a bill that they claim will help do what?
They claim that this will help fight political corruption. But again, given the actors involved, it reminds me of an old T.J. O'Rourke quote. It's one of my favorites, which is, we have a stupid party in Washington or an evil party in Washington, whichever one you think is which, 6, 5, and pick 'em. Occasionally they get together and do something that is both stupid and evil. We call this bipartisanship. And while this isn't evil per se, what they're seeking to do is one of those things that sounds very good. They came together over Twitter, naturally, and put Congress conducting paid lobbying going forward once they're out of office. This is allegedly trying to go after sort of revolving door that people are always talking about. The problem is, of course, that lobbying is a pejorative term, as the D.C. Circuit has called it. That it's expressly protected by the Constitution of the United States. One man's lobbyist is another advocate who is simply petitioning the government for redress of grievances, which is part of that First Amendment that I thought Ted Cruz had memorized. And so if this goes through, which, given the bipartisan actors involved, it might, it's one of those situations where you have something that sounds, again, very, very good, but at the end of the day, it's expressly unconstitutional.
Okay. Why is he doing it? Do we have any idea why he would ever sit down with AOC to try to get something done?
Well, I mean, there's part of it that is sort of a feel-good story in this age of extremely negative partisanship that we have, where, you've got the extremely conservative Republican, extremely socialist, liberal Democrat coming together on something that is advocating for the common good, quote unquote. But really, and maybe that's part of what's going on here. There's optics. I'm sure if you put this to a vote, this probably gets 95% support. There's in fact a reason why we have the Bill of Rights, so that really good sounding and constitutional provisions can't get put up to a vote. What I think is also troubling about this is it's really just empty virtue signaling. Members of Congress are still going to be incredibly influential people once they're out of office, simply by virtue of the fact that they're former members of Congress. They're still going to be able to seed people in their networks to become staffers, to write legislation. Maggie Iglesias, who's over at Fox, he pointed out that if you're a former member of Congress and you become general counsel to an incredibly powerful organization, that's still a position of power within that organization, in the same way that being a paid lobbyist is. So if your concern is political corruption, this isn't a way of doing it. And by completely extinguishing a fundamental constitutional right, even albeit for a highly unpopular group that is members of Congress, I said it's simple, bipartisan, and unconstitutional.
So what they would have to do essentially, if they wanted to stop former members of Congress from having this kind of influence, is they would just have to say, once you've been a member of Congress, you can never have another job, because any job
essentially,
yeah.
I mean, Charles Cook over at National Review, he wrote something about this a few days ago that I strongly agree with, where he says there's just something about the word lobbyist that triggers something in the American lizard brain. Basically, there's a part of the American political unconsciousness that strongly believes in this sort of like Rousseauian general will, that if we get all the lobbyists out of Washington and all the former members of Congress out of Washington, then all of a sudden everybody's going to get together under an oak tree and we're going to come up with fantastic legislation that the entire country supports. And it's obviously nonsense, which is something that the founders understood. I mean, James Madison talks about this in the Federalist Papers, that really your options are either extinguish public debate or set up faction against faction so that people can, through intermediating processes in Congress, come up with legislation as a compromise, which is essential for a nation of 320 million people. And part of that involves allowing people to have paid and unpaid spokesmen of their choice to represent their political points of view. But again, and since you're in Missouri, Stacy, I know you know about the case that I have out there, where I represent a gentleman named Ron Calzone, who got paid by nobody.
He's a friend. He's a friend. An amazing, citizen guy. This guy, he spends all of his time advocating for issues, and he refuses to accept even a lunch. Even if he feels like the cup of coffee you're offering him cost more than 50 cents, he won't even let you hand him a cup of coffee. He's completely he doesn't accept any money. He does all of the work and the research himself. He writes everything himself, researches it, and he sends out informational emails to people like me, where honestly, I live here and I can't keep up with everything that's going on, but his emails help keep me on the tip of the spear for understanding what's happening. And the only reason they're attacking him, Zach, and you know this, is because he's effective. They're only attacking him because this is the only avenue by which they have to stop him from impacting legislation. And it's spurious, but this is what they're using.
Well, and what they said is that Ron for all of his, as you pointed out, incredibly uncompensated citizen activism. Well, that's lobbying, and you're a lobbyist, therefore you have to register and report with the government. And obviously we're fighting that in federal court, saying that's also unconstitutional as a violation of the Petition Clause of the First Amendment. But it is one of those things that we have to be cognizant against. You know, we again, I think it's just something about the American political culture. I mean, we hear the word lobbyist, and we instinctively think, well, that's bad. Because, you know, we would never hire a lobbyist. We would hire, you know, an advocate or something of that nature to support whatever we personally believe in very strongly. Or we would go to citizen activists to do it. But lobbying is petitioning. Petitioning is protected by the First Amendment, and the government needs to stay out of it. And again, back to the AOC Cruz proposal, it is, again, one of those things where if Ted Cruz put forward a piece of legislation that said former members of Congress no longer have due process rights or can no longer exercise the religion of their choosing, we would all say that's insane. And it's obviously unconstitutional, however much we may hate members of Congress for, you know, being members of Congress. And just because the fact they've slapped a different label on it, called it good government and a lobbying ban, just that doesn't get rid of the harm to the constitutional fabric that's happening here.
It's just, you know, what's, I mean, we've all been there where you realize that someone's actively working against you, and then like a few hours later you realize, hey, they're actively working against me. That must mean I'm pretty effective. Like you're just like, what, mowing the lawn or mopping a floor or something, and you're like, wait, does this mean I'm actually doing something? I'm over the target. That's what you're shocked because you're just trying to do what you're trying to do. And that's genuinely, like, that's Ron Calzone in a nutshell. He's somebody who's so busy working, it probably took him a good couple of minutes before he realized, wait, oh, they're suing me because I actually get stuff done. I have to defend myself. Like, he's just so busy working. And so I just think, I do like Ted Cruz. And I do think he is one of the greatest constitutional minds. He's such a wonderful treasure for us as a nation, someone who's principled and has the very best of intentions. But this is one that really, I'm perplexed by him doing this. Unless it's just a desperate attempt to have something they can say they tried to work with Democrats on. And he doesn't even strike me as the kind of person who would put up a farce just so he could have something to point to say, look, I did try to work with them. It doesn't seem like that's his way.
Well, and I can't speak to the motivations of Senator Cruz on this, but, you know, people get things wrong. And this is just one of those instances where Senator Cruz is quite frankly wrong. And again, the reason why it's important to connect this to not only Ron's case, but just generally is, I mean, if Congress can get away with banning lobbying for small classes of unpopular people, in this case members of Congress, simply because it polls well or genuinely maybe people believe that this is a good government measure. And maybe, and I don't even want to judge it as a policy initiative because it's so obviously unconstitutional. Maybe it would even be quote unquote good government if we did this. But once you start chipping away at petition rights, the slippery slope is really fast. And, you know, you may think that, okay, it's perfectly fine to restrict petitioning activity for former members of Congress, but inevitably the flack ends up hitting the Ron Calzones of the world. And so it's very important that we be vigilant on all fronts, even when it's people who, you know, otherwise people may otherwise strongly support, whether that's Ted Cruz. I don't believe that you're a supporter of Ocasio-Cortez, but even if you're a supporter of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, she's also just wrong on this one.
So you point out in your article over at the Institute for Free Speech, ifs.org is the website, ifs.org. You actually point out over here that the actual text of the legislation may only further compound the constitutional harms, which there's actually a definition of lobbyists, which is codified at 2 U.S.C. 1601. And you have some questions in this paragraph here. Can you kind of explain what that's about?
Oh, sure. So the federal lobbying regime is relatively robust. If you are concerned about political corruption stemming from lobbying, we at the federal level strongly regulate paid lobbying. Basically, lobbying is defined as anything that is done to influence a member of Congress. And the only bracket to that is you have to be engaged with a lobbying contract. Essentially, you have to accept $2,500 or more in lobbying or conduct $10,000 in lobbying expenditures. And so the question that I have is how broad is this going to go? I mean, if Ocasio-Cortez and Cruz start tinkering with the federal definition of lobbying, it's possible that members of Congress won't be able to basically go to Capitol Hill and talk about policy in any capacity. If they expand this to not just federal lobbying, but state lobbying, I mean, you're going to make it impossible for former members of the legislature to go back home and just as citizens, in retirement, go to Jefferson City and speak about legislation because of how strictly Missouri is trying to regulate lobbying by saying it's any uncompensated policy activism. And if they actually do anything to change the federal definition of lobbying by unhooking it from the $2,500 in-payment registration threshold, that would have vast ramifications beyond simply regulating an act, regulating former members of Congress. If they get rid of that threshold requirement, essentially they turn the entire federal lobbying law into what Missouri is trying to do to Ron Calzone. So again, we're waiting on the text of this legislation. Maybe nothing will ever come of it. But we have to be vigilant. We have to be watchdogs on this, and hope that nothing gets snuck into what otherwise looks like this, again, a quote unquote good government measure.
Okay, so we'll have to keep up with you on this because the issues are so thorny and so kind of like they're, you're an attorney, this. It's kind of outside of what, we're just not going to be sitting around at our table tonight, Zach, talking about this case. We'll talk about Ron Calzone certainly, but we would not be talking about this thing with Ocasio-Cortez and the lobbying because it's just not germane to our everyday conversation. And so even at our house where we discuss politics a lot, that means it's even less likely at most regular Americans who actually, they're happy all the time and they rarely talk about politics. They're not going to be aware of this at all. Or if they are, they'll think, oh, finally, a Republican trying to work with a Democrat on something. They're not going to understand how dastardly this is. So we'll definitely keep up with you on it and certainly send me any updates on this so we can get you back on to keep abreast of what's happening here. And then, of course, I've reached out before. He's never, ever responded. I will ask Senator Cruz to come on and talk about why this is a good idea. Will he acknowledge my existence? Will he come on the show? Only time will tell. I'll ask him. Zach Morgan, attorney for the Institute for Free Speech. Thank you, friend, for coming on today with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Stacy.
All right. Talk to you again soon. You too. It's always nice to have, a lawyer that can come on and explain stuff to us and kind of get us up sharp on these issues. Sometimes because, lawyers, they get such a bad rap, but then you meet somebody like Zach Morgan, who he's on the side of trying to keep all that other stuff back. And we need lawyers like him to be doing the work that he's doing. So it's really great that they're able to do that. So I want to point you guys over at Twitter. The article that we're just discussing is up over at ifs.org, and it's called Simple, Bipartisan, and Unconstitutional. Cruz Ocasio-Cortez Lobbying Ban Violates the First Amendment, and it's by Zach Morgan. If you want an easy way to find it, just go to my Twitter feed. I just tweeted it out. You can click there and go through and read it. It's actually not super long. You can get through it. You won't be falling asleep or anything. It's interesting. And you can quickly read through it and share it if you want. That is one of those ones where I like to share them because you never know what people are going to read on online social media. Sometimes I get the most interesting notes from people who are like, oh, you share that piece and thanks because I read that and I, what. So definitely share. And just in case you're wondering, stuff that's trending on Twitter right now, National Cheese Day. I'm all about it. Why never invite people over? Not sure what that's about. Scott Peterson, because dude just got arrested. And then straight pride parade. I'm almost scared to click through, but I will over the break. We'll take more calls when we get back. 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. More Stacy on the right coming at you.
She was a baby girl left abandoned on a doorstep in China. Our friends met her in that orphanage that had saved her life, and they adopted her. And believe me, she's not an orphan anymore. There are a lot of folks who have felt orphaned for much of their lives, either left behind or left alone. Maybe you know the feeling. Well, just like that little girl, someone went a long way to get you. Someone who chose you. He's adopted a lot of spiritual orphans into his family, and he's ready to adopt you too. Jesus said, "I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you." We've been cut off from the Heavenly Father by choosing to run a life that He was supposed to run, so we feel spiritually fatherless. But God's Son came all the way from heaven to that awful cross to pay for your sins and give you the chance to be His. You can belong to Him by saying, "Jesus, I'm yours." It's something we'd love to help you do. Call us at 888-NEED-HIM or go to chataboutjesus.com. You will never feel orphaned again.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, where do blind cave fish come from?
Chris, it seems that some fish get trapped in caves living in total darkness. They have no use for their eyes, thus their eyes atrophy and no longer develop. But some of these fish are virtually identical to fish that live in lakes and streams nearby which do have eyes. I've long wondered what would happen if you took some of these blind fish and raised them in a lit environment. Would their eyes begin to develop? The fish still have the genes for eyes, but they're never switched on. Thus, the eyes are never expressed. I've often wondered if they're interfertile with the sighted fish. This seems to be a good research project, but as far as I know, the blind fish are protected, and no such research has been done. Chris, fish were created on day 5 of Creation Week, and that happened back in Genesis.
To learn more about creation, get our free DVD called That's a Fact. Call us at 800-628-7640 and mention the promo code FACT.
Securing America.
The disputed South China Sea is in the spotlight as the U.S. and China continue to do battle in the trade realm.
Kind of call out, good behaviors, bad behaviors.
Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan says the U.S. presence in the Indo-Pacific region gives nations confidence.
I think what you're going to see over time is people really being able to access their economic exclusion zones, right? There'll be more and more confidence.
Shanahan cited military exercises with partners in the region.
We understand the security capability that we're building are going to facilitate an open and free Indo-Pacific.
Shanahan's remarks underscoring America's frayed relations with China as the Trump administration imposes sanctions on Chinese tech giant Huawei and approves a weapons sale to Taiwan, the self-ruled island China claims as its own. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Democratic leadership in the House, they have a new policy meant to protect incumbents, people currently in office. The policy is no challenger to that seat. No consultant can work with a challenger to that seat. Now, the idea is to help keep the people who are in Congress, make them stay in Congress. Here's the problem. 2/3 of those people in those safe House seats are older white men. The people who are making the challenges often female, often younger, often people of color. So people are looking at this new policy and they're thinking, not a good look for the Democratic Party, unintended consequences. Is it going to change, do we think? I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned. All right. Talk about it tomorrow.
White men are everywhere, Tony. Everywhere.
You're surrounded by
a lot of you guys in here right now.
Interesting observation.
Yes. I'm quick.
So Gayle King started cracking jokes because these two white guys are saying all these people who they're wanting to keep in place are white guys, old white guys. And so is the DCCC working against itself and their stated aims of diversifying everything? And my question is, Is it that they still haven't learned the lesson that diversity for diversity's sake does not yield results? So everyone should have a crack at opportunities and the best person should win. If that ends up being someone of color or someone not of color, that's the extra portion of it. It has to be that the person is there because they are good, right? And before somebody who's on the left emails me and says, well, you're only where you are because you're black. No, I'm not. I'm not on American Family Radio because I'm black. So next with that, baby. I've worked hard and prayed hard to get here. And the decision to bring me over, I mean, you have to ask leadership what exactly it was that made them bring me over. But it's not because I'm black. I know that. If it's one thing I know about the people at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk is that they're adhering to the word of God. So don't email me about your, you problems, because that sounds like a you problem to me if you think that's why I'm here. If you think that's why anybody is here on any part of any of the networks over here at American Family and Urban, you just don't understand how things work over here. So this is, I'm going to do news rundown now because there's so much stuff. I'm want to get to all of it. I want to touch on these because I'm a little flabbergasted. First of all, I'd kind of given up on Scott Peterson getting arrested or being held accountable for letting those kids die. I really had. And now he's been arrested. It's great news. It's great news. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if he'll be convicted. But on the big scheme of things, can we all just agree that it's fantastic news that dude is going to actually be held accountable for his inaction that day? Who knows how many kids he could have saved if he just tried. So yeah, you got Scott Peterson getting arrested. And then there's a story out. Now, y'all, first of all, y'all know I like to drink coffee. So when you see the Stacy on the Right Show mug getting lifted up on the show, 90% of the time, it's got coffee in it. 10% of the time, it's hot tea. It's hardly ever a cold drink. Like, it's never anything cold in here. Although I did have my first iced latte from Dunkin' Donuts on Sunday. And let me just tell you, yes. Thank you, Lord. And yes, I'm all about it now. I've always, previous to this, hated iced coffee. The idea of it, I was just like, ew, no thank you. But now that I've had one, and it wasn't one of those super sweet ones with a whole bunch of syrup and stuff in it. It just had a little bit of like flavored syrup. It just had a little bit of simple syrup that they pumped in for me. This is super important topics, y'all. Okay, so this story is over at theguardian.com, and it's about 25 cups of coffee a day. Now, first of all, if you're drinking 25 cups of coffee a day, like what else how do you have time to do anything else with yourself? Oh, you just post it on Facebook so we can know how you're living. High consumption of coffee is no worse for arteries than drinking less than a cup a day. So coffee lovers who drink up to 25 cups a day can rest assured that the drink is not bad for the heart, scientists say. Some previous studies have suggested that coffee stiffens arteries, putting pressure on the heart and increasing the likelihood of a heart attack or stroke, with drinkers warned to cut down on their consumption. But a new study of more than 8,000 people across the UK found that drinking 5 cups a day, or even up to 25, was no worse for the arteries than drinking less than a cup a day. This research was part funded by the British Heart Foundation and is being presented at the British Cardiovascular Society Conference in Manchester. I love y'all Brits, and I know some of you listen to the show, so please don't take offense. But what? I don't trust this. I don't trust this at all. Everything in moderation. And I also think, and this was told to me by my internist one year when I went in and I was complaining about having trouble getting down to sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And the first thing she said was, okay, every decade your tolerance for caffeine actually lowers. And it's an individual type thing. For some people, it lowers a smidge and they barely notice. For other people, it's a significant decrease in your ability to tolerate caffeine. She asked me how many cups of coffee I drank and at what point during the day do I stop drinking coffee. And at that point, I was still having coffee at like 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which I still kind of do. But I could even have a cup of coffee at like 6 o'clock. And she said, you need to cut it off at 2 p.m. And what I found is that I actually do better when I have coffee that is decaf or half calf, half caffeinated, half calf, half decaf. The later into the day I go, I have to basically say, I'm gambling here. Do I want this cup of coffee? And if it's decaf, which is when you say decaf, it's almost no caffeine at all. It's just a teensy bit. If you have decaf, if I can have decaf up till 4. But if it's caffeinated, I have to cut it off in between 12 and 2 p.m. And that's for this decade that I'm living in. Who knows what it'll be the next decade. And it also is impacted by, if you're underweight, overweight, ideal weight, how much exercising you're doing, how many steps a day you're walking, et cetera, et cetera. But I point that out because it took her asking me that for me to kind of, okay, wait, let me check in with myself. And I started paying attention instead of kind of mindlessly making coffee and just drinking it. I started paying attention to how often per day I was drinking it. But I really feel like if you're drinking 25 cups of coffee a day, when are you drinking water? And you have to drink water in order to keep your skin clear and to keep your brain functioning well, to keep your memory operating, to help you sleep at night. You have to keep yourself hydrated. And there are a number of your functions that they're background type stuff that you just want to be well in order, which requires that you drink water. So I kind of take these with a grain of salt. And they have here Dr. Kenneth Fung from the QMUL. The quote from him is, despite the huge popularity of coffee worldwide, different reports could put people off from enjoying it. And I don't know if maybe they, their study, which was led by experts at Aston University, including 4,803 people going to hospital with a cardiac arrest and assess their 5-year survival. Okay. But if you don't have that same history of having a cardiac arrest, so again, take it as a grain of salt. The best source for this type of thing, like I know for a fact, if I printed this story out and took it to my internist and said, I can have 25 cups of coffee a day, she would laugh and then she'd say, you can't be serious. This is not good for you. That's not good for you. And then she would probably want to talk to me about why I felt like I needed that much caffeine per day. What is the reason why I'm not getting enough sleep at night that I can stay awake on my own without, having 25 cups, 2 or 3 cups. I've seen where people have been advised not to have 6 cups a day. But again, that's based on the individual and their own medical history. So I just thought that was a really interesting headline for them to have up today. 25 cups of coffee a day safe for heart health. That sounds just crazed. So remember, we've talked many, many times about the tech giants and how they've been behaving, and how the House, Congress, the Senate, everybody has, Josh Hawley, Senator Hawley here from the state of Missouri, junior senator, he has actually taken this up as one of his signature issues, and that is holding the tech companies accountable. And so now you've got the House, he's in the Senate, now you're over in the House. The House Judiciary Committee has launched an antitrust investigation into the tech giants. Now, the reason this is important is like for me, I'm constantly losing followers on Twitter. I don't maintain a steady balance of them. If I don't have a viral tweet, my numbers go down. Like I've lost 700 followers in the past 30 days, and I'm about to drop below 68,000. But I had a viral tweet about 6 weeks ago that pushed me back up, so I had about 900 new followers. So why am I losing followers like 160 a week? Why? And how do I know that? Because I have a little thing that I've signed up for that tells me how many I gain and how many I lose. I lose more than I gain. Why? I had someone send me a direct message last night. I don't get like when you tweet, I don't see it in my timeline. I'm on your timeline, and all the tweets you sent out in the past 24 hours, I haven't seen any of them in my timeline. Now, I don't understand why that would be, unless they're throttling me down because I'm talking about social issues and I'm tweeting about right-sided politics and attacking the liberal narrative. So I guess I just don't deserve to be on there. Someone messaged me last night and said, I haven't seen your tweets. Maybe you should head over to Parler. Parlay. It's parler.com, but it's pronounced parlay. Now, remember I talked to you about that here on the show, 6-8 months ago when it first came out. And at the time, the website wasn't operational, but now it's up and running. But part of me says, why should I take time to build up over there when I've already built up over here and tech giants are crushing my ability to reach the people who have obviously decided they want to see my tweets? Same thing on Facebook. We currently have, 16 people watching the live stream? Constantly getting messages from people telling me they're not getting the notifications. That's because these tech giants don't want the message that we're putting out here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk and this particular show. They don't want it getting out there. And why? Because it's the truth? Because it might hurt their narrative? Because it might make people vote properly according to Christian worldview? Bingo, ding, 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 ding. We win a prize for getting the right answer. But nobody's watching because, so thank God we have our own built-in audience here through that is untouchable by the social media giants, which is why it's so important that you support American Family Radio and that you stick with us on the terrestrial side. So the House Judiciary Committee has announced on Monday that it will launch a bipartisan sweeping antitrust investigation into these tech giants. The quote is, a small number of dominant, unregulated platforms have extraordinary power over commerce, communication, and information online. Based on investigative reporting and oversight by international policymakers and enforcers, there are concerns that these platforms have the incentive and ability to harm the competitive process. The Antitrust Subcommittee will conduct a top-to-bottom review of the market power held by giant tech platforms. This is the first time Congress has undertaken an investigation into this behavior. So the committee's investigation is set to focus on three main areas: documenting problems with competition in digital markets, determining whether dominant firms are conducting themselves in an anti-competitive manner, and determining if existing competition policies and antitrust laws and enforcement are up to taking on these issues. Now, there's a big picture, obviously. The Justice Department and FTC have agreed to split up efforts to investigate charges of monopolistic practices by Google and Amazon. And the DOJ got Google and the FTC got Amazon, per the Washington Post and Bloomberg, who are reporting on this issue. The DOJ is preparing to launch an investigation into some of Google's practices, and this is according to the Wall Street Journal. So this matters because members of House Judiciary have been worried about big tech's power for a while now, and they're turning their attention to the issue, and expectations are that they're not going to hold back. They're going to go into this full bore. The move set the table for the kind of long-running antitrust cases that can sap company resources, result in embarrassing legal discovery and depositions, and in the most extreme scenarios lead to corporate breakups. Now, just in case you think I'm reading from a conservative website and that this is wishful thinking, this article that I'm sharing with you is from Axios.com, not the conservatives. Not the conservatives. So, what I want is for it just to be fair. And I always tell my kids there's no such thing as fair. So let me adjust that. I want it to be a level playing field. So you can win or you can lose based on what you do, as opposed to them crushing conservatives and what we're putting out based on our worldview. I know the worldview I hold and that I espouse here on this show is not one that is shared by people who work at Google and Facebook. But that is my right as an American citizen to hold these views and to share them at will. And Facebook and Google and Twitter are private corporations, but they represent a part of the American life that is inescapable. And their decision not to give a level platform for anyone to engage in effectively shuts off the ability for people to speak into the public discourse. And that is and effectively crushing free speech, which is a constitutionally protected right. I know there are disagreements on this subject on the right side of the political sphere because people don't want to make private corporations into utilities and allow them to be regulated by the government because that's an expansion of government power. But exactly what is the remedy for organizations that tend to crush the speech that they don't like, and it always tends to be on the right? Yeah, that silence you hear, that's the answer to the question. There isn't anything being suggested other than what we're seeing happen now. What's interesting about this is if you look at the comments that they have in this Axios piece, you have House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler, which you can't get this done without him because they control that committee, and Ranking Member Doug Collins, who's a Republican from Georgia. So it's both sides looking into this. Look, okay? I want to see something happen. I'm tired of tweeting and nobody seeing it. There, I said it. Okay. That's the music. I'm done here until tomorrow. God's blessings chase you down and be upon you in the most awesome way possible until we meet again. Stacy, Washington.